So that's all the data that we're going to need for this notebook. So let's start with the project parameters. So project parameters within our MSP are separated into two groups. One is the global parameters. So this is going to control some properties globally, and that's not depending on the variable. And variable parameters are parameters that are specific to certain variables. We can assign that to certain variables. So starting with global parameters. Global parameters are accessed through our msp.global params. So if I just run this, I will be able to see every global parameters and the current value of that global parameter. So there is a comprehensive list of the parameters in here. So let's say I want to see some details of what is a given parameter. Let's say plotting.c. So let's comment this out for now, and let's take a look at the rmsp.global params.describe, and let's give the property that I want the description for. And this is gonna give me the description of what that parameter is. So you can use describe to get an explanation. Before we start changing the values of the global parameters, let's just see how things look like by default. So to demonstrate that, what I'm gonna be using is a section plot on my copper variable, and also I'm gonna be plotting CDF plot on my copper variable. So this is gonna demonstrate a lot of the features that we can control. So this would be the default look of a section plot. We have the default color bar. We have the default extent of the grades that we're coloring. We have the default looks of the plot and sizes. For the CDF plot, we have all the defaults here as well. The x-axis, the number of decimal places. This is all properties that we could change, and this is just how it looks by default. So now let's start changing some of the properties. So to change the properties with global parameters, what we can do is to change each property individually, or we can just make a larger update of the global parameters with a provided dictionary. So that's my preferred approach. Usually I have several parameters that I want to update at once. So let's start with global params.update and then create a dictionary. So let's say I'm working on some project that has a different unit for spatial. So it's not metric. Let's say spatial unit is gonna be feet. And other things that I want to change, say plotting CMap. So CMap is gonna control the color that we're going to be using by default. One CMap that I like to use is spectral R. So let's keep changing things. Another one is plotting grid, which plots grid on our axis. So let's set that to true. As you can see, there's no grid in here. So that means the default is false. So we're just setting that to true. Other properties of the plotting that I can change is plotting grid color. So let's use 0.5, which is going to be a grayscale. Let's change the plotting grid line width to be 0.3. That should be a number. And then plotting grid style, I want to use solid lines, not dashed lines. That's all for the plotting grid. Let's change some other properties. Say I want to change the plotting significant digits to be 2. So I can change that. And also I want the default figure size, plotting fig section plot fig size to be 8 by 8. And that's all. So if I run this cell, I'm changing several default parameters of my plots and the behavior of RMSP in general. So now let's take a look at how the same code looks like after specifying some global parameters. So as you can see, the section plot is now showing grid lines as specified by these properties. The color bar is now spectral R, which is controlled by this one. So the coloring of the copper has been changed. In this case, it's not attached to copper. It's just globally. Any variable will look to be the same color map. And another thing that you might have noticed is that before we have isting in meters, which is the default, and now we have the units set to feet. So that was controlled by spatial unit. The sizes of the plot, the section plot is a little bit larger now because we have specified it to be 8 by 8. Looking to the CDF plot, we can see the grid lines and the significant digits is 2. It was 2 before, so if you want to change to 3 here to see the impact of the global parameters, now we have 3 significant digits. Let's just get back to 2. So that's all things that you can control with global parameters. Of course, there are many options. Again, you can always run this and check all the options you have. And if you're not certain about certain properties, you can check the description of the property. But for instance, let's say, well, I have defined this globally, but I still want to use for this particular plot some manually defined parameter. So for instance, I want to use color map equals jet, and I want the CDF plot number of significant digits to be 4. So if I run this, everything that we specify at the function call is gonna overwrite the global parameter. So this takes precedence over what is being specified globally. So for instance, the color map now is jet because I explicitly specified that on the function call, and the number of significant digits is now 4 because I have explicitly selected that on the function call.